Story time! Today I want to tell you a weird story how I learned English by reading Twilight without internet back in 2010. This was about English, but it could be used for any other language as well. First, like many, I started learning English at school 2 times a week, not because I really wanted, but because that was a school program. Like many others, I managed to figure out how the system works and with the help of my good friends, cheated all the way until high school. Without actually learning anything at all. And that was up until the point when I realized that I really wanted and needed English because I wanted to get my higher education at university in English so that I could be free, I could go anywhere and work and study in any country in the world. And that brings us to the first, probably one of the most important points when it comes to learning English. You really need to understand why do you want to do this. And even better, have a deadline. Deadline for me was clear. It was IELTS English International Certification exam that I had to pass in order to be admitted to the university in the UK. I had about 2 years at the time before I had to sit the exam. My English back then was complete mess. It was after about 8 years of studying the language by attending those classes. As I would say in Russian, it was a complete porridge in my head that I had to figure out. I didn't have money to attend extra classes or get a tutor, so I had to basically DIY the whole thing. And for learning any language, you have 4 fundamental parts. You've got your vocabulary, you've got the grammar, you've got listening, and you've got speaking. For vocabulary, I went to my school library and borrowed the only book in English that they had at the time, which was Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I read the entire book while writing down every single word that I did not understand and just translating it and learning it by heart. The book was really thin, so it was really fast to do and wasn't that scary at the start. Also, it was a book for children, so the words that the author was using were pretty simple and easy to understand, which is also a good tip if you're learning a new language. You can start with kids' books. Then I was hunting for the next book of a bigger challenge, and my classmate Gennady, shout out to Gennady, gave me the only book that he had at the time, which happened to be Twilight, of about 500 pages total. And I repeated the same process again, so I started reading the book, writing down every word, translating it and learning it by heart. I remember it was summertime, I think 2011, and I was sent to Russia with no internet, and the only device I had was Nokia 5800. Unfortunately, it actually had offline vocabulary so that I could use it to translate all those words from English to Russian. After the first 50 pages, I actually started adding less and less words from every page, which actually makes sense. If you are an author, you have your own vocabulary, and at some point I guess you just run out of different new words to say. So that's what happened to me, and the rest of 450 pages was way easier to learn compared to the first 50. When I finished that book a couple of months later, I had 1,890 words written down, translated and learned by heart. And I think about 30 or 40 of these words were literally describing rainy weather conditions in Seattle, where the whole book was basically based. What I did for grammar was slightly different. I bought this test books that had basically different tests on different topics, and at the very end they had answers to them. So I would do the test and then write down all the answers that I thought were the correct ones. I would cross-check it with the answers at the back of the book and troubleshoot and figure out why I did a certain mistake, and then go back to grammar books and basically try to figure out why I was wrong in those particular cases. I also read another book by Dragunkin, which was really helpful, but this is specific for learning English from Russian. I highly recommend it. To improve my listening, it was all about listening proper English. Back in 2010, my mom got a new telly that had an option to turn on with an alarm. So I set it for 7 a.m. and every morning it would wake up me with BBC News Radio every single day. And maybe I didn't understand absolutely everything, but because my vocabulary was slowly growing, I was able to pick up more and more words. And I think a lot of the pronunciation that I have correctly today comes from those 7 a.m. news on BBC. For speaking, you obviously need to practice. I didn't have anyone else to practice apart from my English teacher that I didn't see that often, and my friends. My best friend Vlad was 100 times better in English than me, and it just happened that we were spending a lot of time together running athletics, so about 15 extra hours every week we would just talk to each other in English while we were working out. I did absolutely the same with another friend of mine, Dmitry, but in this case we were texting each other, so all instant messages I was also typing in English. When it comes to learning a language, I found that environment is super important. And of course, ideally, you want to go to a different country, to the UK, and to experience living in a family or attending summer school or doing something like this where you can plunge yourself deeply into the English or different language environment. I didn't have privilege to do that, unfortunately, so I have created my own environment. I did that by changing everything I could change to English, be it telly or radio or internet or reading news or using my phone in English settings or playing video games set in English. Everything I could do, I would try to do it in English if there was an option like this. So I completely surrounded myself with the language that I was learning at the time. The good thing about learning a new language, especially if you surround yourself with an environment like this, is that the return on investment of your time spending learning this language is obvious almost immediately. The more words you know, the more you start to understand while you're watching the news, the more you can use the same words when you speak to someone, so on and so forth. So it's kind of a closing loop, and it allows you to progress and see results and be rewarded, at least psychologically, for those results almost immediately. It's important to note that learning a language by yourself and being able to talk it is very different compared to passing an international standardized language test exam, which I had to do. So to succeed in that, I did invest about 150 euros to attend a 6 weeks course preparing me for this particular specific exam, and shout out to Rob, who was my very first proper native English teacher that really helped me to pass the test. Finally, 2 years after I started this whole journey, I managed to pass this IELTS test exam with 6.5 average with no less than 6.0 in each subsection. That was the bare minimum required to be admitted to study sciences at the University of Edinburgh. A few years ago, I repeated the entire process to learn Spanish, and it worked as a charm until I dropped it because I started a business. If you are one of the 5% people who actually get to the very end of this video, thank you so much for watching it. And if you do have any questions, please drop them in the comments below and I'll try to do my best to help. And this was day 5 for me in a slightly different, longer format. I'm not sure if anyone actually gonna watch this at all, but who cares? I'm still getting to my goals, and I see you tomorrow.